Now, today I wanted to take a turn away from what we were doing before. We were talking about Hannah Arendt and her book, The Human Condition, and talk a little bit more about philosophy in general. What does it mean to do philosophy? Based on my own experience, the conventional idea of philosophy is to ask grand questions and try to try to provide answers that would seemingly be impossible from a theoretical point of view. For example, what is the meaning of life? Does God exist? What is the absolute good? All of these questions seem to be so far and distant from our everyday life, and yet we still ask them. There's this belief that philosophy or religion might be able to help us answer these questions or provide good enough answers that we can not have to feel like we need to answer them anymore. And thus results is a satisfaction that we feel at first there is a lack in the world. There is a lack of an answer to a question that affects us, it preoccupies us. And then we come up with a reason or we're given an answer that seems to satisfy or justify the question itself. And this works well in the line of foundationalist thinking. Foundationalism was a type of philosophy that tries to systematize all the questions in the world to a consistent belief system or answers that are all consistent with each other. One of the system, for example, is Kant, and he basically tried to say, by our faculty of reason, we should be able to answer, or there should be a way of conceiving the world that is consistent with reason totally, that we could prove that God exists or not with reason itself. But later, philosophy is actually much different than foundationalist thinking. Instead of trying to arrive at final answers, a lot of philosophy is today, or at least seems to be, is ways of thinking. That the value isn't in the end itself, or the value isn't in the end as an answer, but the value is in the process or the method by approaching answers. And the way that this is done is that when we use language to try to answer questions, we always bracket the meaning of the words that we use, meaning that we always kind of defer judgment or evaluation of the words that we use, so that if I say X is the answer to Y, someone can answer, well, what do you mean by Y? We're deferring the evaluation of what Y means, and thus we kind of regress back and say, well, why is this? And then we try to basically construct a systematic system, but we're always deferring some value in the explanation. And philosophy is the resolution of that value. It's the forward or the foregrounding of the meaning of words. However, this kind of modern philosophy never believes that we'll be able to foreground enough meaning of words until until everything is resolved. We won't get into a state where everything is everything has a specific value. We'll either always have a contextual background that is unknown from which things foreground from, or we will get into some circular reasoning that will just have us kind of keep on going in circles of trying to evaluate words that depend on other words. For foundationalist thinkers and people who believe that philosophy is meant for getting answers, they'll see this circular reasoning as kind of not making progress at all, or kind of futile. Why would you ever want to do that? However, with later thinkers who value the means, the thinking more than the solutions, the ends, being able to navigate or go in that circle in certain ways is kind of the point of philosophy. It's exercising or practicing, getting much better at going around in that circle. So just as a chess player will play like a grandmaster will play hundreds of thousands of games, that's kind of their method of going around a circle. The more they go around it, the more familiar they become with it, the better chess they're going to play, but they're never going to solve the game. Philosophy is just like that, except it's not playing chess. Instead, it's evaluating the meanings of words. A nice metaphor for this is something that Martin Heidegger gave. He kind of related philosophy to kind of wandering around through paths in the woods, kind of making paths. And if you imagine in the woods, your path making, can go in circles. It can go from one side to the other side. There's no one solution. It's really just a wandering. And thus, if we think about it from the conventional view that philosophy is seen as kind of being able to give answers to very hard questions, there's a divide between the kind of perception of what philosophy is supposed to be. You have philosophers who really just want to practice about what it means to use language, and then you have people who want them to attempt answers that are really hard problems. These people are never going to be satisfied with the philosophers, because the philosophers, they're not necessarily motivated at coming to final definitions or solutions, but being able to talk about them is basically the ends for them. This idea really goes back to the Socratic tradition, where Socrates believed that he was the smartest person, not because he had the most solutions, but because he knew that he knew nothing, and he, while everybody else believed that they knew something. What Socrates was really good at was using language to weed out contradictions and beliefs that weren't justified in some people's arguments. In this sense, we could say that Socrates is the first modern philosopher, because what he's really gearing at is using language in order to just navigate language. He's not necessarily trying to come to final solutions, but he is engaging with people about their beliefs, and therefore, or thereby finding that those beliefs aren't as consistent that they thought that they were.